No. Do you hear me? Do you hear me? Anybody
Yes.
want to write me a note? 1 second. Yes. My recorder, no. Yes, okay, good, because I don't hear myself. Okay, here we go. Ready? All right. Now, this week in Likuti Torah, it does not have Parshat Shoftim. Why doesn't it have Parshat Shoftim? I never really examined. So we're going to do something which is relevant to Rosh Hashanah, and most important, something that's really relevant to this week, and that is the coming of the Mashiach. So here we go. As a prophecy in Isaiah, and it says, V'haya bayom hahu, and it will be on that day. You talk about Shofar Gadol, there will be sounded a great shofar. Uboa ovdim be'eretz Ashur, and there will come all of the lost people in the land of Assyria. Ashur also means the rich countries. V'nidachim be'eretz Mitzrayim, and those people who have been pushed away in the land of Egypt. Egypt refers to all the poor countries, or like in Russia, they were poor. The Jews were poor in knowledge of God. And there's countries where Jews left Judaism or were not exposed to Judaism because it was so good. That's the lands of Ashur. And there's some places where the Jews were not exposed to Judaism because it was so bad. And so that's in Eretz Mitzrayim. So this refers like America, England, all those places that are good. And Egypt, that refers to like Russia, especially Russia, because the Jews, a tremendous number of Jews living in Russia, and the Rebbe said perhaps even more than all the world put together, the Rebbe said. But the ignorance of Judaism was so great, and the opposition for Jewish education was so great that people didn't even know. Okay, anyway, so what's going to happen? And it will be that day that there will be sounded a great shofar, and will come all the lost people in the land of Ashur and the people that were pushed away in Egypt and in Mitzrayim, and they will bow down to God, Bahar HaKodesh, in the holy mountain and in Jerusalem. Now, obviously, this is speaking about Mashiach, and it's speaking about specifically the Jews, because only the Jews are scattered around and pushed away. And also, it's talking about the Jews because they're going to come to the holy mountain. Who is a holy mountain? Only the Jews have a holy mountain in Jerusalem. Okay, so in the days of the Mashiach, it says there's going to be a big shofar that's going to be sound, a shofar, a big shofar that sounded. And this somehow or other is going to wake up all of the lost Jews in the land of Ashur and the Jews that are pushed away in the land of Egypt, that they'll all want to come to God in the holy mountain in Jerusalem. How is a shofar going to do that? I mean, the shofar doesn't say, you think maybe a big announcement will come. You're all invited to Jerusalem. Jews, wake up, right? This is the holy voice of the Lord, your creator that took you out of Egypt, telling you, that's it. Don't pretend you can be proud you're a Jew. Let's make it to Jerusalem. Everyone to Jerusalem. So no, there's not going to be a voice. It's going to be a shofar. Dude, everybody's going to hear the shofar, and they're going to say, hey, you know what? Let's go to Jerusalem. Everybody's say, wow, I had the same idea. Let's go. Where's everybody going? Going to Jerusalem. Let's go. Right? All these Jews, they didn't even, why are you going to Jerusalem? I don't know. Says, maybe you're a Jew. No, I'm not. I don't know. I'm not a Jew. All of a sudden, his mother says, yes, you are. You're a Jew. Your grandmother was a Jew. Wow, that's the reason why. All these people, they don't even know that they're Jews. They're going to all flock to Jerusalem, and they're going to want to serve the creator of the universe, because this is what's going to do in Jerusalem. It's going to be the holy temple. But why a shofar? What does a shofar got to do with it? It doesn't announce anything. It's not articulate. There's no explanations. There's no directions. There's no what tour guide. You have these books, See the World, or whatever it's called, explains to you, how to get to Jerusalem, how the cheapest hotels are, and things. Nothing. Big shofar. You know what? I'm going to go to Jerusalem. All of a sudden, everybody says, what's going to happen? So let's go. We have to understand. Shofar Gadol. Also, why does it say a big shofar? The my maliyasa, the shofar Gadol. What is so great about a big shofar? Yoter more al shofar on a shofar she'enu gadol. I mean, as far as I know, there's no musical instrument, no matter how big you make it or how amplified you make it, that you can sound the shofar in one place in the world and the whole world will hear it. Huh? Sound the shofar on a spaceship. There's any noise that you can make. What type of other thing is this? And it's going to be a shofar. Say a trumpet, a big trumpet is going to be sounded. Oh, maybe. You can have as many stacks of amplifiers as you want. And it's not going to be, if you sound in one place, everybody's going to hear it. So what's the point of the whole thing? And also, what does it mean, a big shofar? What does it mean? How big could it possibly be? There's nothing that big. So if already there's going to be a miracle, it's going to be heard. So it can be a regular shofar. What if it's a miraculous shofar? There'll be sound the shofar. No, it has to be a big shofar. Okay, we have a lot of how do you say, material in front of us. So let's try to make progress. What's the advantage of a big shofar more than the shofar that's not big? Like, for instance, the shofar that's sounded on Rosh Hashanah now. It says, Hashem Elokim b'shofar yitaka. It says that God, the Lord God, He will sound the shofar. And it doesn't say a big shofar. Not only that, it doesn't say that in that day, who's going to sound the shofar? Mashiach's going to sound the shofar, or God's going to sound the shofar. It says the shofar will sound itself. Yitaka, it will be sounded. So let's see what's going on. This is a parentheses from the Tzemach Tzedek. Hine, behold, Rosh Hashanah, on Rosh Hashanah, on when we say, Zeh Yom Tchilas Masecha, Zikron Yom Rishon. And let's understand the holiday of Rosh Hashanah. It's coming up soon. Now, in Judaism, they celebrate this holiday called Rosh Hashanah, New Year's. What's Jewish New Year's? The day that God finished creating the world, the day that God created man. God created the world in 6 days. The seventh day he rested. 6 days of 24 hours, right? The whole thing of 24 hours. This is a mystical, spiritual principle. Why 6 days? Why this? Suffice it to say that that's what God did. On the last day of creation, the 6th day, God created man. That is the day that we celebrate Rosh Hashanah every year. The day that man was created. Happy birthday, man. On Rosh Hashanah, we say, on our prayers, it's part of the prayers. Zeh Hayom, this is the day, Techilat Masecha, the beginning of your deeds, God. Zikaron Yom Rishon, it is a remembrance for that first day. Remember when God created man, way back there. This is a remembrance when God created man. As of this year, will be 5,783 years old. Adam, first man, 5,783 years old. Happy birthday, Adam. Adam, by the way, is buried together with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Did you know that? He and his wife, Adam and Chava, are buried together with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in Hebron. That's right. Which we'll talk about that later, but nevertheless, it's true. So Adam was the first man, and ideally, all human beings were supposed to be like Adam, which namely serving God. That was the thing of Adam, which is serving God. But because Adam ate from the tree, so therefore, the propensity to be selfish increased dramatically in the world, and Adam decided to opt out instead of serving God to serve for himself. So people started getting interested in going to heaven and all things, egoistical stuff. And the first person to come along and serve God, only to serve God, not for any afterlife or spiritual remuneration or fear of punishment or whatever, just to serve God, that was Abraham. And from him came the Jewish people. The ideal of the Jewish people is supposed to be like the first man, like Adam, to serve God because God is creating us, because God gave us responsibility, gave us free will, He gives us everything we have. So that's what he said. So we say in our prayers, this is the day of the beginning of your deeds, God. The beginning of your deeds. It is a remembrance for that first day back then when you created the world. Okay, this makes no sense. This sentence, we'll see why. At first glance, there is a contradiction. The law of Reisha Seifa, that the beginning is not the end. Why? Because if you say this is the beginning of your deeds, God, Mashma, this reveres that is the beginning. When was the beginning? 6 days earlier, when God created light. That was the first day. Hainu Shabo Mechadesh B'chol Yoshana. This God renews the world. And afterwards it says, no, it's not the first day. This is just a remembrance for the first day. This is not the first day of creation. That this is only a remembrance for that first day of creation. Shenivra B'olam, that the world was created in 6 days. So first of all, it doesn't talk anything about man, creating man. This is talking about the first day of creation. First day of creation was 6 days before man created, or in the Jewish calendar, the 25th day of Elul. Elul is the month which comes right before Rosh Hashanah. So is this really the first day right now God is creating the world, or is it just a remembrance for that first day? But because both of them are really true. Behold, in Rosh Hashanah, the whole idea of Rosh Hashanah. Shenikra Rosh, which is called the head of the year, Rosh Adam, just like the head of a person. The head of a person, who Makar Achayot, is the source of life for all of the limbs. Rosh Hashanah is like the head of a body. It's the most important organ in the body. So Rosh Hashanah is the most important day of the year. Just like the brain, sends life to all the limbs. Shabo, that in the head, in the brain, Reshit Giloy is the beginning of the revelation. I want to make this a little bit bigger here. Oh, too big. It is the beginning of the Reshit, the head. The head is the beginning of the 1 minute. Both of them are true. And Rosh Hashanah is not called the first day of the year. It's not called New Year's. It's not called the beginning of the year. It's called the head of the year. Why the head of the year? Rosh Hashanah. It's because it's like a head. The head of a person is the source of the life for all the limbs. That in it is the revelation of the whole life force. And from the head comes to all the limbs, chayotam, their life, the kiyumam, and their existence. Befratot, individually. Shemitachila, that in the beginning, all of the life and the movement, the life, and the existence and the senses were all included in the head, or in the brain of a person. Ki mishkan nefesh is because the place where a person lives, where a soul is in the brain, right? You can make a person a transplant anything you want. You can transplant his whole body, whole entire body transplant. But you can't transplant the brain. If you transplant a person's brain, then that's a different person. Is because the place of the soul, the person's, how do you say, consciousness and free choice, he is in the brain. And from it, it spreads out to all the powers of the limbs, from a concealed way into a revealed way. La'ayin rose, the eye to see, the foot to move. It's all in the brain. A person, God forbid, gets hit some part of his brain, his foot stops working, his eyes stop working. But Kach Rosh Hashanah, the same thing. Rosh Hashanah is the Reshis Giloy. This is the revelation of all the life of the whole entire year. Okay, according to Judaism, everything is alive. God is creating everything constantly, and God is the source of life, and God is called the living God. So everything has life in it. Everything is alive. Even rocks, they're being created by God all the time. The life force they have in them is a very, how do you say, minimal, like a human, like the body. The body, it's there. It has molecules in it, according to science. I think all these atoms and things like that, they're all spinning around and moving around. There's all these force fields there. But in any case, even not according, God is creating everything all the time. So everything is alive. According to Judaism, the world is not separate from God. The world does not really exist on its own at all. The world is being created all the time by God, all the time. And God creates the world from himself. So just like God is pure life and pure reality, so he creates the world with this sort of watered down life and watered down reality. But he creates it in a pattern, just like man is created in a pattern, and to the degree that it says man is created in the image of God, and he's created constantly, every moment. This is very, very important because this is the message of Judaism to the world, that we have to worship our Creator and only our Creator. And this Creator that creates us, he took us out of Egypt. The Jews, the fourth of the 10 commandments says God created the world in 6 days and the seventh day rest. That's the fourth. But the first two says that this God that creates the world, he's not just some sort of an amorphous, existence, consciousness, which all encompasses all being, the great, whatever it is, the great oneness or something like that. That's also, that's to a certain degree is also true. But the fact is God has a personality and is actively in the world and also reactively in the world. God reacts to what we do. So time is a creation. And time, just like man is created with a head and a foot, etc., as time also is a creation and also has a head and a foot. The world also has a head and a foot. The head to the world is Jerusalem. That's the head. That's where the Holy Temple is. That's where the consciousness of the world is. That's why Mashiach has to build a third temple, because the whole idea of the temple is a physical place where awareness of God is found. And the Jews, they're supposed to be like the head of the world. In a person's body, we have the head of but the head of time is Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah, Reishis Gilui, this is the beginning of the revelation of life of the whole entire year. It's the beginning of time. Time itself is a creation. Pretty weird. That's how these prophets could know the future, because the future, so to speak, time, past, present, and future, it's not really, how do you say, 100% real. Future is just an aspect of time. It already exists. The future already exists. What does that mean? I don't know, but nevertheless, that's the way it is. So the head of all this whole business is Rosh Hashanah. Kach Rosh Hashanah, this is the beginning of the revelation of life of the whole year. Ki v'ata mechayes kulam, because God, you enliven everything. God, you enliven everything that exists. God, you enliven it. And it says in the Tanya, if you read the second chapter, the second book of the Tanya, Shar Yechaduna, the Emuna, says, don't just say you enliven the world, atam mehaveh. You also create the world constantly. Because see, if it says Bakal Yom V'Yom, every single day, Chadashim L'Bokarim, brand new, just like the morning, Chadash Chayus, there is a new life in that day. In fact, God is creating everything every second brand new, but it's like I say, it's done in a system. So every hour is the beginning of that hour, and every day is the beginning of the day, and every week is the beginning of the week. That's the idea of Shabbat. And every month is the beginning of the month. That's Rosh Chodesh. Today, by the way, is Rosh Chodesh. Did you know? Today is Rosh Chodesh. Depending on when you see this video, but when I'm saying it now, it is Rosh Chodesh, the beginning of the month. So it's the Rosh, it's the head of the life force of the other, and Rosh Hashanah is the head of the life force of that whole year. Time. Every single, at the beginning of the day, God enlivens the life of that day. And every day is different. Every single moment is different than every moment before it. Pretty exciting life. If you're into it, if you're not. The Cain also Bafrat and individually Ayomim Tovim, the holidays. The holidays Shabbat Shana, when every year Shabbat Nimshach, then in them is drawn down some sort of a big life force, but Tosfos Ilu with an additional power. Than the weekdays. Passover has a different revelation, etc. We'll get into this. Because all this life force is drawn down, all of it, from all the holidays, all the weekdays, all the months, all of this is drawn down. The big way is Rosh Hashanah, the head of the whole entire year. Because Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot, this is the parentheses are written by the first Rebbe of Chabad. He wrote this book, right? Likuti Torah. This is written by his grandson, who became the third Rebbe of Chabad. It says Passover, Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot, they correspond to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Pesach, he explains why. Pesach is kindness, God's love. God showed his love. He took us out of Egypt. That's Abraham also is God's love. Shavuot is God's power. He gave us the Torah. Sukkot is God's mercy, encompassed us with clouds of glory. Okay, let's go on. Let's see, where is this? 1 second. I know it comes to an end. Actually, this is pretty interesting, but okay, let's go. Because Bo on Rosh Hashanah, Nimshach is drawn down. The life for all the rest of the year, for all the holidays, for all the weekdays, is drawn down. Achayos, the life force, Mimakar Achayim, for the source of life. Hamachaya, what's it? Hamachaya Chayim, the source of life. In other words, what gives life to life? Ein Sof Baruch Hu, the infinite one, Shalamayla Mebechinas Zaman, which God, of course, is above time, our time. So in other words, there's all these different aspects of God, but there's only one God. There's only one creator. All the other aspects are creations. And that's why it says you shouldn't worship any other God or any other gods, because there are other gods. There's these other powers that God creates, and that people can plug into these powers, and that gives you a person a certain sense of security and spirituality and inspiration and etc. All these things. But that's called other gods, like the golden calf. Everybody really got off on the golden calf because it connected to some sort of a spiritual power that's more accessible than, and it requires less self-sacrifice and less going out of yourself than worshiping God. When you worship the creator, it means a little bit you have to stop being the boss. You have to admit that God is the boss. He's the leader. All these other idolatries, all these other religions are all the same thing, just little variations. What am I going to get? I want to receive the most. Receive. What am I going to get? I want it now. I want it all. I'll get it when after I die. But I'm the sin. That came from the sin of Adam eating from the tree, selfishness. All the other religions come from selfishness. What am I going to get? I'm going to go to heaven. I don't want to go to hell. I'm going to be blessed. I'm going to this. A person, of course, has to think about himself, but not to worship himself. Because the whole religion is just worshiping, right? What I'm going to get, I'm going to receive. And anybody who doesn't believe like me is going to burn in hell. The whole thing of Judaism, of reality, is thinking about the creator, which is very difficult. It's much easier to connect to something that's similar to you, right? A person, I think. Okay. In any case, Rosh Hashanah is showing us that there's a beginning, a head, a source. This life is Elyon Yoter. This is the highest life force. The Kol Kol Chelki Achayas. Rosh Hashanah, we connect to the highest source of all sources of life. God created the whole world. He created time. He creates the whole business. So on Rosh Hashanah is drawn down in a general way, life force for all time, the whole world, every detail. And afterwards, Nimshachim Be'elam, but it's drawn down in a concealed way. And afterwards, it is drawn down in every single individual time, every holiday, every weekday, according to what's fitting. Sort of like you have a country, so you make an allocation in the beginning of the year, right? $5 billion is allocated for education. And then in the course of the year, they have this to draw from, so to speak. That's what Rosh Hashanah is. Rosh Hashanah is God decides what's going to be in the next year in a general way, or let's say even in a specific way, but it's concealed. And then everything according the rest of the year, everything is drawn up. But Rosh Hashanah is very powerful. Every second, every instant is a very powerful day. It's like a brain operation. But in the beginning, right? First of all, we have Rosh Hashanah. In the beginning, it's divided up into 12 months of the year. Then in the first day of the month is drawn down a general force for that whole entire month. Like I said, Rosh Chodesh. And then after that, every single Rosh Chodesh, the 12 beginnings of every month called Rosh Chodesh, generally, l'chadesh mimenu, to renew in it, mitchalek, and it's divided up afterwards into days, into weeks, and then into days, and then into hours, and into minutes. That's what the rabbis say, that a person is judged every day. What do you mean he's judged every day? Even the fact of the matter is that Rosh Hashanah, the beginning of the year, Rosh Hashanah, that's really the day of judgment. The day of judgment is on Rosh Hashanah. What does it mean you're judged every day? But it means that on Rosh Hashanah, a person is judged. Every person is judged on a general way, which is going to be drawn down for the life in a general way. And Alpha became, but nevertheless, there is also a judgment every single day on what is fitting to be on that life force of that particular day. That's why we Jews we pray in the morning. Pray in the morning because that's so to speak draws down the life force for that day. Helps to draw down the life force for that day. It's drawn from concealed to revealed. In other words, God decides what's going to be on Rosh Hashanah, but we draw it down. It's like you go to the bank and you say, my stipend is here. Once a month I receive whatever is from the government. The money go. Okay, let's see your identification. Here it is. Oh, Mom, I forgot my driver's license. I forgot my Michigan. Can't give it to you. Sorry. Right. The same thing as every single day is waiting for you, some sort of a blessing or whatever, but you have to identify yourself. That's what it means. The imiyos shebakavar nidon, even though a person was already judged on Rosh Hashanah, b'amshachat chayes kolali, in a general way, it's possible that maybe it won't come down to him. It won't come down from this general life to an individual life. It's waiting for you in the bank, $1 million, but you can't take it out because you lost your social security number or whatever it is. So it is by a Jew. It could be that everything is waiting for you. A non-Jew also. The God judges the whole world. It's waiting for you, but you don't get it because it's not being drawn down by you every day. Like it's possible, just like it's possible that a person might not. Right? Sometimes you go to sleep, your leg falls asleep, your arm falls asleep. Right? It could be that life is not drawn down from the brain to some limb. And it could be that a person gets a hit on the head and his eye can't see and his foot won't walk because there's some sort of a nerve that's cut off or something. You just attach it back and it starts to work. The life force, which comes from that limb, Nisha, remains in the brain concealed. And it stops up there and it's not drawn down to the limbs. Similar, also it can be the same thing. It could be that there's life force, big blessings are waiting for us, but the life force remains in the general life force of Rosh Hashanah, the head of the year. And then, this kindness, this gift was waiting for me up in the heaven, but it doesn't come down, only in the upper worlds. And therefore, it says a person is judged every day if he's fit to receive the blessing that's waiting for him that was decided from Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah. So the Rebbe also wants to point out to us that things are not arbitrary. Even though God does feed and enliven the world from his kindness, so even if you don't pray or anything, and that God still gives it to you, but if a person prays, it could be waiting for him a much bigger blessing. Now that blessing does not have to mean that all of a sudden he's going to win the lottery or that suddenly somebody's going to come to his knock on his door and give him a new car. It could just be that his attitude changes. It could just be that he's a little happier that day. He's a little more positive. That's a bigger blessing than money. Money is also good. I'm not knocking money. Don't think I'm knocking money. But never. So therefore, but Rosh Hashanah is drawn down a general life for all of the year, for all humanity, all being. And also that not just all humanity, all the animals, all the plants, everything. This is a new life, and Rosh Hashanah is brand new. And therefore it's called Rosh Hashanah Tchilas Masecha. Therefore, Rosh Hashanah is called the beginning of your deeds. Every year is the actual beginning of God's deeds. Actual beginning. Why? Because there's drawn down a light and a life force, a godliness, new to create the world. So every year the world is created in a new way. Rosh Hashanah, in this Rosh Hashanah last year, was not drawn down this life force only on 1 year from above time into time. And so it is also B'tchilas Brias Olam, in the beginning of the creation of the world, was a drawdown of new life every Rosh Hashanah on that year from above time into time. Like it says, Ki Elef Shani Beinecha Ki Yom Esmol, like it says that 1,000 years are like 1 day by you. What does it mean? That the 6,000 years of this world, they are like 6 days, so to speak, by God. Okay, a person, of course, can ask, what do you mean every year everything is created brand new? My house is, I've been living in the same house for like 50 years, it's the same thing. I have a tree in front of my house, same tree. My next door neighbors are the same next door neighbors, right? My eyes are still in my head. Everybody's eyes are in their head. Everybody's cats are still cats and dogs are still dogs. And, everything is the same. What do you mean everything is the same? So he says, what does it mean? Is God decided before, when he created the world, that there was going to be a world. That's what he decided. And the world is going to be a world. It's going to be man, it's going to be man. And exactly the opposite. Because God creates everything the same way all the time, so that he purposely misleads us. Purposely. That's what the world is about. The world is purposely misleading. So people could think God does not create the world. God did not create the world. It is evolution that's creating the world. It's the forces of nature that's creating the world. It's the laws of nature. It's the laws of whatever it is. Okay, who passed these laws? Who decided these laws? How it is that the world works so miraculously, according to the laws and principles, it's really quite amazing. But okay, let's say you can explain the whole thing, right? Where it came from, okay, we don't know. But nevertheless, so the world, therefore, God keeps the world going all the time. So a person can make that mistake and think that there's no God. They see the world is always the same. It's always the same. But the fact is if you look and you see, history is always changing, and people's ideas and people's minds, people's consciousness, right? All of a sudden pops up somebody with some idea, right? If what is his name, Stalin or someone would pop up like 200 years ago, nobody would listen to him. Who would listen to Stalin? The most stupid idea in the world. All of a sudden, in this time comes up to this, right? 100 years ago is 100 whatever years ago. Oh, this is the most amazing idea in the world. Right? It wouldn't work. People's minds change, people's consciousness change, but nevertheless, and the history changes all the time. What's going on in history? But the world is constantly changing all the time. And because God is constantly deciding who's going to make a war, who's going to be in peace, who's going to be healthy, who's going to be not. All of this is a level of time. But above time, where the creator is, so to speak, this level of reality, there is no time. But Kolo is man, and includes all the time. Then in the course of the 6,000 years, it's all in one instant. From this place which is above time, pure life, pure good, is drawn down life force every Rosh Hashanah for that year. So a little bit of infinity comes down in the beginning of every year. And we draw this down by the Shofar. We'll see. Afterwards on Rosh Hashanah, which is called Chag, it's called a holiday. It's the only holiday that has the moon is gone. All the other holidays, the moon is shining. But on the Rosh Hashanah, it's the only holiday that's in the beginning of the month. There's no moon. That the source of life goes back up into its source, and by means of the shofar and the prayers, we draw down a new life into the world. That's what it means that the world is put into the hands of the Jews. That's what it means the Jews are chosen. The Jews are the chosen people that were chosen to benefit the world. Here the Rebbe is saying a little bit deeper. We're chosen not only that, to be partners with the creator of the world, to create the world. And therefore it's called Tchilas Masecha. Therefore the world, Rosh Hashanah, is called the beginning of your deeds, God. It's the really beginning. It begins a whole new life force for the whole world. But nevertheless, it's only just a remembrance for that first day, Yom Rishon. What does it mean? Because Rosh Hashanah, the first back there, Rosh Hashanah, 5,780, another month, it's going to be 83 years ago. All this was on its own. God created the world 6 days. He created it all on his own. But as soon as God created man on the seventh day, now from the first man being created until now, at the ruta de latata talia milta, everything depends on our work. Mishana shavra from the past year. Ukamosha anaroim, like we see, shalo kol shanim, that not all the years are equal. Yeh shanim tovim, there's sometimes good years. There's some years which are sweet. There's bad years. Hainu, because mach mashinoi often, because of the different way that we arouse God from below. Okay, this is a very basic principle in life in general that Hasidut wants to point out is present in Judaism that's sort of been, how do you say, abandoned. And that is that God reacts to what we do. God cares about what we do and he reacts to what we do, whether it's Jews or non-Jews. It's called peh. God himself, we're not talking about a person, we're not talking about a star, we're not talking about an angel, we're not talking about the God of good or the God of bad or the God of this, all these gods the Hindus have or this, right? Those are all powers, but those are what we call other gods. We're talking about the creator himself that's above all creation, above spiritual, creates the spiritual. This creator that's above the spiritual, that's above time, above place, he actually reacts to our requests and prayers and deeds. This makes no sense, but this is a condition that God made when he created the world. That's why he created the world. And at the ruta dilatata, that's why he created man. When did he create man? Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is the beginning of this whole dynamic interrelationship between man and God, that God reacts to what we do. And from now on, everything, since Rosh Hashanah, everything depends on an arousal from below. And according to how the Jews, especially, because Rosh Hashanah is a Jewish holiday, how they arouse God from below, this changes from the year that Shana Shavra. This changes from what was the last year. This year becomes different according to what we do on Rosh Hashanah. Whatever it is. If so, and that's by means of what? The Shofar. If so, on Rosh Hashanah that we do this year, is a judgment. Even though even though that it's a day of judgment, but it's a day of judgment with kindness. God wants to create the world. He wants there to be life. He does not want it. He looks at everything favorably. But nevertheless, it is a judgment day. How it's going to come down, or if it's going to come down, all this good. Look, and therefore, according to Torah58a, therefore on Rosh Hashanah we read the Torah reading is the story of Abraham taking his son to sacrifice him, because when Abraham taking his son, this is the secret of Hagbaras of kindness of Abraham and the Gevura of Yitzchak, which we're going to talk about this later, but we said Abraham was the aspect of God's love, Yitzchak was the aspect of God's severity. And this is Abraham tied up Yitzchak and he took him to sacrifice him. That's the idea that on Rosh Hashanah, the kindness of God is higher than the severity of God. It also shows on this idea of self-sacrifice. Because Abraham, if he would kill himself, so that would be a sort of self-sacrifice. For him to go and kill his son, Yitzchak, only because God said, was going against everything he stood for, everything he logical, and he was willing to sacrifice everything to do what God wanted. In other words, not to receive anything, not this world, not the world to come, nothing. You can't go to the world to come, you kill your son, you're going to get. That's the whole essence of Rosh Hashanah. Alpha PK, nevertheless, it's not similar to the first day, even though that this is what's called the remembrance of the first day. And every year we make God react just like Adam did, but it's something like Adam did. It's not the same thing. That back then, on the first day, when Adam was created, the world was done on its own. Because there was pure kindness. We saw how kind God was. Back then, when God created man, it was all God did it all on his own. There was no arousal from below. That's why we say it's a remembrance for the first day. What does it mean? It's a remembrance for the first day that we have this every year, that same kindness that God showed when he created everything for free. We have a ray of that coming down every year, but it's only a ray. It's not the same thing. Nevertheless, the severities are made sweet. They're sweetened. on Rosh Hashanah. So it's a remembrance. Every year it's a judgment day, but it's a remembrance for the first day when God did it all on his own. God wants to create the world. God wants it to be good. That's what the rabbis say. Say in front of me sentences of kingship. You take 10 sentences from the Torah, from the prophets, from the writings that say that God is a king. And that, so to speak, forces God to be a king. He wrote it in the Torah, so he has to do it. Say in front of me 10 sentences that I'm a king, so that to make me a king, I will react and I will be a king on you. We have to say these sentences, not good enough that they're in the Torah, that God is a king. We have to say them to arouse with an arousal from below until God decides to be a king. This is drawn down a new life force every year. That's the whole idea of Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah means a new life force in the world. That's for sure. God judges very good. God judges everything constantly. But we explained first, the general judgment of the year is done on Rosh Hashanah. It's like I said, like in the government, you have the Israeli government, right? So in the beginning of the year, they make an allocation. We're allocating, $100 billion for education and $200 billion for defense and $700 million for, transportation. So that's like the beginning of the year. That's how much. How it's going to come down is also judged every day. And it's also possible that a person can repent and recant and etc. And God will change the whole thing. It could be they'll open up the bank, give you more. Exactly how it works, I'm not God, but generally way of speaking, this is what the Rebbe is saying. So Rosh Hashanah is the big allocation for the whole entire year, for the whole entire world. And day to day, it depends on our prayers and how we acted in that day. So a person is just, but even more, it says a person is judged every moment. There was a person, what was it, Rav Abba? I forget. It says that we used to pray for his food. Please, God, give me food. And the food was right in front of him. And he would pray, please, God, give me food. Why? Because he said God is creating the world every single instant, brand new. So the fact the food is sitting in front of me now doesn't mean that by the time it gets to my mouth, it's going to be there. So he would pray every instant. I mean, we don't do that, but the principle is still a principle. That's what it means. We make God a king over us. Now let's take tomorrow, God willing, we'll continue in this amazing, beautiful idea. And we're going to, of course, in the end, get back to what's this big shofar that is going to be sounded by the Mashiach, or in the days of the Mashiach, that will make all the Jews wake up and return to consciousness and come to the land of Israel, to the Holy Temple. We'll talk about that. Let's now do the Devar Malchut. Here we go.